Some connectors are built for people in their 20s. If you don't have rock-steady hands and perfect eyesight, you're going to have fun with these little buggers. Oh, keep them apart. Look at that. Boing. Oh, wow. This is impossible. I know. I do. I make a mess of it all the time. Today, we're connecting the frame of the printer, building and fitting the side filament sensor, we're building and fitting the NFC antenna, we're checking all electrical connections and then fitting the back panel covers, and finally we're fitting the side panels and the spool holder. Thank you, Captain Scrunch. Stick around to see me tearing my hair out, trying to fit a barely visible connector without breaking it. Hopefully, it's more fun to watch than it was actually doing it. I'm Chris. Welcome to Coding with My Dogs. Today, it's all about putting the body together. So, in essence, we're doing a bit of bodybuilding. First up, we're collecting these two front profiles, noting that this one here has the two holes and that just has one large hole and one slightly smaller hole there. So this is the front left profile, this is the front right profile. We also have a few screws. Starting off with the front right profile and putting it in place here, noting that this hole here is to allow us access to the belt tensioners. And then below that, there we've got the screw hole that's going to be used to connect the XY gantry permanently in place. So we start off by putting in those two screws for the gantry, this side and this side, and then putting two screws down at the bottom here. Again, this side and this side, as indicated by the fairly obvious arrows. So for the front left profile, first off, we've got this hole at the top here, which is where the lever for that little micro switch for the door sensor protrudes. So we need to be careful, don't snap that lever off. Again, below that, there's access for the belt tensioner on that side. And then at the bottom, the screw holes that we need to connect into the XY gantry, which I assume we will be doing next. We are indeed, so connecting there and there. There's little screws for the XY gantry, and same again at the bottom. We have these two pieces for the front profile, and the one we need for this right-hand corner here is the one that has these two holes, not the single hole. So this piece. Okay, I got that wrong. So actually it's at the other end of the pieces. The one we need is the one that has a large hole and a small hole, like so. So one screw goes in there, and then we access a screw head for something else via that one. And I think that's probably the screw hole for the belt tensioner goes through there. So this is the one to secure it to the printer, and this is access for the belt tensioner assembly. So send one screw in here. And the other goes in here. Allegedly. Okay, this final piece goes in vertically. We need to be a bit careful. We don't snag this door switch here. Send in a screw from this side. And send in the screw this side. or not. So I noticed this screw is like slightly misaligned between here and the gantry, which is still mostly loose on top of these screws and runners. So just use that screwdriver there just to lift it so that we can now get a screw into it. And another one around here. And just tighten up the bottom ones out of frame as well. And there you can see, as I mentioned, that's the hole that gives us access through to the belt tensioner. Sending a screw into that. One final screw over here. Now we're preparing the parts for the top frame. We've got 3 identical parts here, and then one different part that has those 2 screw holes in it, and that goes to the rear of the top frame. And so we have some of the round-headed screws and a few of the bucket head screws here, 4 of those. And we also need 3 of our nylon rivets. First off, we take these 2 pieces. So we assemble the back piece here closest to us, noting the little tab that comes out in this location here. And then we take one of the side or one of the other 3 pieces and orient it like this. It has its own tab that needs to be up on this corner here. So this goes under that one, that will go under the next one. Being careful, the tab here from the back section goes underneath the side section, and then we put a screw in there. We repeat that exact same process with the other 2 pieces, the front piece and the other side piece. Again, making sure the tab goes underneath the main part of the structure, and we put in a screw here. So now those 2 L-shaped pieces are created. We put them together and make the entire top frame assembly. Again, making sure that the little tabs go underneath the main parts in both these corners, and we put a screw into both. Okay, we've got these parts here for the top panel. We've got some screws. We need to screw them all together. So this one part here has got 2 screw holes here, the others don't. So this is the piece that goes at the back of this lid assembly. We're taking this part, the flange sticking out like that. And then that flange goes underneath one of the side pieces like that. And we'll need to get the screw in there. Don't over tighten it for the moment, just leave it like that. And we'll do exactly the same with these other pieces for the other corner. Get the screws to line up. We just bring the 2 parts together, use a screwdriver temporarily just to line them up like that, and drop our screw in. Swing it around there to the other side. And one last screw in place there. won't tighten any of these up until we actually drop that onto the top, so there's still a little bit of wiggle room for this to make sure it's completely square. Now we take this, making sure we're oriented with the back section with those two screw holes as we saw earlier, and then this gets dropped down onto the top of the printer. So we need to just go through carefully, making sure that this drops in nicely behind the back panel. These various tabs go underneath the main part of the various side pieces that they connect up with. So same here, showing the front corner, making sure those tabs go behind. And then we need to put a screw into each of those and then repeat that same process all the way around the printer. These two here, two around there as well. On the back, we are putting in 3 of those little nylon rivets. And now we're putting in these little screws to attach the rear part of the XY gantry. Instructions are saying that the gantry will probably need to be pushed up a little bit from underneath to make sure that those screw holes align. So probably we'll use the screwdriver technique to get that up into place, put a screwdriver into one and then sink the screw into the other, and then repeat the same process over on this side. Okay, we take our top piece that has those 2 holes that we previously identified that go towards the back and do it like so. And now we need to just carefully bring each corner in over the tabs that are in place on the printer like that. That corner had gone the wrong side, but that's everything together the way it is supposed to be. So let us get some screws in place if we can. Aiming for this hole here to start off with. Let's make sure we're lined up. There's a little bit of a loose tolerance there. There's a bit of a gap. So we need to be cognizant of that as we're putting the screw in there. It needs to go in from that sort of gap. One-handed catch. That's good. 2 going in from this side, this corner I should say, 1 in here, one in here, same again for this corner. 1 in here. And 1 in here. And just 1 here to secure the back piece in place. And there we go. On final step, we've got these 3 holes in the back panel that we need to put one of those little plastic rivets through each of those. These are little rivets, if you remember them. It's been a while since we last put one in, but start off with the middle there. Wasn't a very satisfying connection. I don't know if it's clicked in properly or not. So that's just the way it works. And that's those 3 in place. Okay, I made a mistake with this top panel. I've put in the M34 RT screws, and this is where we should have actually had the M34 bucket-headed screws in here. So I'm going to remove those. Luckily, I think we're still in a position where they can be replaced without disassembling what we've just put together. Take the other three out. And we'll replace those with the bucket-headed screws. So that's that. And one more thing was there's actually some additional screws that need to go into the back panel. Sorry. Where is it? There. And there. And I think we need to do those as well shortly. Let's get those corner ones in. So finally here we are trying to align these two holes to fix the gantry itself to these legs. I'm just using a screwdriver trick to just slightly raise it. It needed to be raised by maybe about 2 millimeters. So initially the hole inside there wasn't visible. After I raised it by about 2 millimeters and put the screwdriver in, we are good. And this hole now is aligned as well, so I'll sink a screw into that first, and then I can replace the screwdriver and put a screw into that one as well. I find with these screws now going into the metal, if you put a bit of force there, it does tend to help it get started. If you're a bit weak with it, and they just skip and the threads don't meet. So just, a little bit of force, not too much. Just putting a bit of pressure on the screw, that helps it get aligned. So using the same technique here. Again, about the same. That probably needed about 2 millimeters going up there. Get that screw into place. That's not too happy. Bring the screwdriver in from this side. That's it. Try again here. No, that one isn't too happy. Just putting some pressure up on the gantry from the inside. No. So it looks to me like it's completely aligned. But that screw doesn't want to go in. That's got it. Okay, job done. Okay, so we're now putting together the side sensor. It has this plastic part here with a recess that takes this little lever, a steel bearing, a couple of magnets and a screw. And this is basically designed, I don't think you can quite see here, but the filament will pass through here. What is it, Mr. T? This is correct. I'm just reading through the instructions. I'm about to tell them about the lever. I haven't forgotten. I will tell them about the lever. So, yeah, the filament passes through there. That little ball bearing goes in this place and will push down against this lever. And then the end of this lever will be here. And there's basically a little sensor. I don't know if it's a Hall effect sensor or IR sensor or something that can tell when that's in place or not, and therefore can tell whether there's a filament passing through here or not. And these two magnets go here and in the lever, and they basically act as a sort of magnetic spring to push the lever against the ball bearing. So first up, we sink one of those magnets into the little lever like so. Puts the ball in place there. This shows it lying flat. I think you probably have a bit more success with it tilted at least 45 degrees to keep the ball in its little hole, otherwise it would be rolling out all the time. And now we're putting the lever in like so here, using that screw to allow it to pivot. And note this is the flat part of the lever that the screw goes into. There's also like a recessed bit, which you think would be for the screw head, but actually it fits over the bottom part of this housing so that it can pivot nicely on that. And with the screw in place, we just make sure that this can move freely. So the screw needs to be tightened enough to stop this from wobbling around, but it still needs to be able to easily move because it's going to be the pressure of the filament only that pushes this up and down. So next up, we're putting in the other magnet here. Now, as I mentioned, these act as a spring. So what you need to be doing is making sure that this magnet is repelling that magnet away from it normally. So it means that you have to put a little bit of pressure on here to move the two magnets together. So best way to do that is to, as they show here, just insert it partially first. Make sure that this is pushed away. If it's actually pulled in together like that, then maybe use some pliers to just carefully pull that out, keeping this one away from it so they don't stick together again. Turn it around and push it back in, and then everything should work fine. And I think that's what this is trying to show. It's showing that in normal operation, these should be pushing away from each other. And this piece here should be pushed up against this little pillar. Mr. D! Yes, I'm talking to the people. Some people want to know how this printer works, or maybe some people are just watching because they know I make a mess of it. I know, I do. I make a mess of it all the time. And then, as it says, once you know everything's correct, then push that magnet all the way down. Now we are going to prepare the little sensor for this little circuit board, and then we've got this additional cable. This plug will need to go into this circuit board. We also have a top cover for the assembly and a few more various screws and square nuts. Okay, so this confirms it's an infrared sensor. So that is like a little infrared detector that can see when that piece slides in or out of it. And it is asking us to connect it in this manner. The white cable is the ground connection. The brown cable is the plus 5 volts. And I would hope that is shown somewhere. What? What's the matter, Mr. T? You having fun? You having a nice time? You having a nice time, are you? You having a lovely time there. Oh, that's good. In fact, there you go. On the bottom of it, it will show there's the plus 5 volts and there's our ground. So we just make sure white goes to ground, brown goes to plus 5. Now we are orienting this cable into the housing. So it looks like at the end of the cable sheath here, we have the unsheathed wires going in through this gap up to about here. So this is just to start things off. The connector and the circuit board are sticking up out there. And so basically this cable comes in and then loops up and back over itself, leaving this gap of the circuit board going into this section here. And then this IR sensor will fit either side of the end of that little lever. So the orientation works like that. That just slots in there. That fits in like so. And then this cable just gets tucked in neatly. And then finally, we put in that tiny little M2x8 screw to hold that in place. Now we're going to drop 2 nuts into the assembly here and here. Those will hold them to the frame later. What a matter? And we need to just make sure that they are aligned with the holes on the outside. So use a screwdriver or a pair of pliers just to make sure they come into exactly the right place and stay there. And now for the final step, we can clip the cover in place. We're putting the M38 screws in there and there. That's the screw that's already in place that works as our pivot. So it's just on these 2 on the outside. We have the housing for our side sensor here. And then we have this little arm that will swing within it. And now we need to put one of these 2 magnets into that little space there on that arm, which means we have the fun of trying to separate these 2 magnets. Not necessarily easy, just try and slide them against each other like that. Keep them apart. Look at that. Boing. Okay, yeah. That's quite strong magnets, so let's try and do that again. And put this one the other side of the table for the time being. And then we want to slide the magnet into that little pocket there on this piece. So leave it flush at the bottom of the part there. And there's a little bit sticking out, which I assume is expected. It is expected. Now we have this piece here. There is a little semi-spherical inset, which is where we need to take this ferromagnetic ball, place that in there, and then there's a little raised area with a screw hole at the bottom, which is what this needs to rest on top of. And then this pouch here with the magnet will come against the side of that ball. And the magnet's going to want to attract the ball to it like that. But that's no problem. We can hold that in place. And then we want it to sink in a screw. It's the M310 screw needs to go in there. One M310 screw. Down into there to seat it. There's another one of these screwing into plastic, and we want to get it tight enough to hold this lever in place, but to allow the lever to still move. If we tighten it to the point where the lever can't move freely, then we've come too far. I think we can go just a little bit further than that. Yep, so that's stiffening up a bit there. So we'll just release quarter turn. And that's probably good enough. So you can see the ball here is going to just rest against the side of the sensor path. I don't know if you can, if I hold the light above, I'm not sure if we can still probably see through there. Maybe if I put the light underneath, you might be able to see the sensor path there and the ball slightly protruding into it. So the way this is going to work is that the other magnet here will be pushing against this. And obviously when there's filament there, it's just going to move it slightly. And I believe there's going to be, over this end of it here, we have like a photo sensor or Hall effect switch or something like that will just detect whether there's filament there or not. If the filament's removed, the second magnet will push this like so. And then we'll be able to tell basically that we've run out of filament. So that's that. I guess the next step is to put the next magnet in place. So here's the second magnet. We need to make sure, obviously, that it repels this one. It doesn't attract it. So I can check by putting it in there that as long as it's down, all the way down there, it is repelling. If I was to turn it around that way, it's going to attract. And that's not what we want, obviously. And I may regret doing that because I may not be able to get it out again. Let's use these pliers. So I was going to just turn that around, but of course the pliers have grabbed it now. Okay, so having ascertained our direction, we want to put that in like that. We can see that they are repelling. Can easily test that. Push that down in place there. And that looks good to me. You can probably test the filament path by putting a screwdriver through. See it move like that. Screwdriver's a bit too wide, but you can see how that works. So we have our filament sensor cable. And there's our little filament sensor board. So as you can see, it's got that little gap there that goes over the end of that little arm that we just looked at. First step is to get this plugged in. And we need it, if it's face up, we have the white cable first. So face up, white cable nearest to us like that. It goes in like so. So white, green and brown, white, green, brown. Brown cable connects to the +5. White cable connects to the ground pin. If we flip that over, we can see there +5, brown cable, ground on the white cable. Okay, so when we connect it, it's basically saying, putting in the cables like that, and then we're doubling this back over the top of the cables. And of course, as I mentioned, this part of the arm should be going through the center of that. So make sure that still has movement in and out there. That looks good to me. And then we need to secure it in here with the M2x8 screw. Maybe this one. Yep. So let's just do that up nicely like so. Just to get a bit of resistance. Screwing into plastic again, so, that's probably good enough. For the final step, we've got our two nuts that need to go in there and over there. And they need to go in far enough to line up with those holes, which are at a bit of a jaunty angle, so we will see how well that works. We may need to use a screwdriver just to pull them down into the correct location. It's not super tight in there, so should be fine. I think we're going to put a lid over the top of this very shortly. That's good. Now we have our little cover part. That goes over the top because it's a cover. Interesting. That magnet is protruding too much, and the cover does not fit neatly over the top of it. It doesn't give us any space. And those magnets were the same length. Have I used the wrong magnets? I'll have to check. Let's take that one out. Not easily. Maybe the space at the bottom there for it to protrude more, so if I take this and then push it so it is flush there, that way around, the little ball bearing is attracted to the other one. Hopefully I can quickly slide that in without moving the ball bearing and everything else around. Not so easily, no. Going the wrong way, so that's what I need to be doing. So a bit sticking out down at the bottom. I'm hoping there's space for it down there. Yeah, looks like there is. So yeah, that's a little less than there. So the sticky out bit from the magnet needs to go towards the bottom of this case, not towards the top. Make sure this still can move. This needs to be backed off a quarter turn again, like that. We can see it's going in and out of the little slot for the sensor there. So we can try that again. Take our cover, put it over the top, and that's much more satisfactory. We can sink our M38 screws into it. One here. And the other over this side. Now we're going to take the part that we just built. We're going to take one of these little plastic collets and 3 zip ties. First up, feeding the zip tie through these little slots at the back of the XY gantry on this right-hand side, so beneath the Bowden tube feeder, and then with the clip for the zip tie facing outwards like that. Next up, we're sticking the collet into this little opening for the Bowden tube in our filament sensor. That should go in and should just click nicely into place. And now we need to push in the Bowden tube into that assembly as far as it will go. You may have a little more length here, you may have a little less, it doesn't really matter. This sensor is going to go up in this sort of area here, and it will attach to the side panel, but push that in as far as it will go. Make sure, because this is a bit slippery, you need to quite firmly grasp it and push it in place. So as I mentioned, holding this roughly in the center like that, bring the cable through the zip tie and then cinch up the zip tie, not fully tight at the moment so that the cable can still move up and down if we need to adjust it. Then we're routing the cable through the rubber grommet at the side of the back panel there. And I now route the cable along with the rest of the cable bundle and somehow get it through this rubber grommet into the X-Buddy assembly here. It is plugging into one of these, I think this one. So it doesn't need too much length there, but we just need to make sure that's in place. And now we need to click it into this filament connector here, which may well be easier said than done because there's a lot of cables coming through here. This is quite a big bundle. So this kind of makes it look relatively easy, but I don't think it will be. And for the final step, we can gather together all of that cable bundle, use these 2 zip ties to just hold them neatly in place. And the instructions are saying to just keep these holes clear. I think that's where the panel that covers all of this up will clip in place later. Let's get this zip tie in place. Through there. Try not to loop the belt. Just light myself. Back down the other side. I can just sit there like that. We have this little collet in which we want to feed the Bowden tube. That snaps into this little hole here. Just like that. Right, now we need to take this and we want to feed the Bowden tube into it. So let me just put that cable over there just to get it out of the way for the moment. We've got a little tube guide there. But just hold the Bowden tube up above us. We should hopefully be able to just slot that in. Again, Bowden tube is primary purpose is to be a bit slippy, so I think that's firmly in place there. That's good. Bring the cable around. So instructions say to move this so it's about halfway along the length of the back of the printer there. And with that in place, we are going to put the cable up into the zip tie and then cinch it closed. So it's saying to just tighten the zip tie lightly so that we can adjust the cable if we need to later. So that's sort of cinched in place. Now it says to cut off the excess, but obviously if we do need to tighten it a bit further later, we really need something to grip onto, so I'll cut it about there. And now we're taking the end of this cable and we're feeding it through, along with the other cables, through that grommet there, out to the back of the printer. And we just guide this along with the other cables. Somehow get it through this grommet at the back here. And we pull it loosely in like so. And now by some miracle, we need to get this connector into that little socket. So for starters, let's try and just feed it behind all of these other cables. Now we've got one coming across the top of us from this connector as well. And again, we need the little tab to be facing towards us. They don't make this easy, do they? So, I don't know if I can get at it. With the tweezers like that. Oh, wow. This is impossible. I almost feel like this should have been the very first one we connected. I got that in then, but I think that was more by fluke than by anything else. I just sort of angled it in and just jiggled it until it eventually popped in place. And I just want to make sure that we're not snagging any other of these little wires. I think we're fine. Oh boy, that was not the most straightforward part of this build, and this build has not been straightforward. All right, now we need to get this connector bundle, that's cable bundle, and get a couple of zip ties around them. That looks nice. And we just want to keep these holes here clear because that's where we will be attaching the cover plate for this in a later step. Cut off the excess there. Now we are preparing the NFC antenna. We have this little antenna PCB. It has a tiny little socket on it there. This cable with two tiny little RF connectors. One goes onto that socket, one goes into the X-Buddy board. A little bit of double-sided tape for this one, and then the NFC cover, which is going to house that, and a couple of screws, of course. So first up, we prepare the tape, place it onto the back side of that board in this sort of orientation, and then just remove the paper cover of that, making sure that this sticky bit is left behind and you're not removing that. And then that orients like so within the NFC E1 cover. So with the connector over towards this side where there's just the single pillar and doesn't have this area. So making sure it's over that side because that cable is only quite short and we need to make sure that it can reach the relevant connector within the X-Buddy board itself. And then just putting a bit of pressure on in a few places here to make sure that sticks and seats correctly. And now we're clicking that little connector onto the little socket. And as you can see, they're all very delicate. It has like a slightly beveled edge to it there, which will help it find its position there. And then you just need to put some level pressure across the back of it to click it into place. It's easier said than done. I've played with these before. I've done some experiments with LoRa and that sort of thing that require these tiny little antennas to be clicked in place. So it's not fun. You may need some form of magnifying headset to do this. So I have this one that I bought very cheaply, and these magnifiers fit in front of your eyes like so, and mean you can really get detail on something that's sort of this distance from you. So may well help when trying to connect that up, especially when trying to connect it into the back of the printer. And so here we are inside the printer. The NFC connector is quite hidden, but it's between these two little copper test pads. So you may be able to locate it that way. And then of course it's next to the heat bed power connectors. So just looking for it there, and you can see it like so. So we're routing that little cable in and clicking this into place. Obviously, whilst you're trying to put this in place, you've got the rest of this stuff hanging off the back of it. So it could be a bit tricky. You may need to sort of wedge this in somewhere so that you're not trying to balance this and plug this in at the same time. So we have our NFC coil here. We need to put some double-sided tape onto the back of it on this side where it's blank. So we take the protective film off there. Because we want to keep that hole clear. Let's just double check the instructions. It doesn't really say anything about avoiding that hole, but I think I'm going to place it so it just clears it. Like that. And then just try and tease the edge of this off. As always, we don't want to be peeling the adhesive film itself off, and I think you can see there, hopefully, that's that is firmly attached. So let's get rid of those pieces. We're taking our NFC cover like that, and NSC coil itself is sticking over this side. We need to make sure that this little clip here for the antenna is pointing over to this corner. I don't think the position of this, other than aesthetics, matters too much. So the only thing we have to make sure of is that that connector is over to the side here. Our cable is only very short, so we need to make sure it's in the right place. Let's just push that down. And that's connected okay. So finally we have a tiny little connector here, and that needs to clip over the top of that one there. You can see the size of these compared to my fingernail. This is going to be tricky. Let's bring it across here. Right. So I feel that is actually over it, but doesn't seem to want to go down. I think that's got it. And that should do us. So, okay, if we thought the previous stage was tricky, then take a look at this stage. We've got to get that little connector into there. Nothing works. The pliers, the tweezers, they all just slip off this. Oh, basically you've got the weight of this hanging down as you're trying to do it. So this is really not ideal. Again, just you're fighting against the weight of it and it all slips. Nope. It's just going to block the camera, isn't it? There was me thinking the difficult part had been finished in the previous steps of this printer build, but this is one of the trickiest bits so far. And I feel like that was seated then, but it's just not going in. There. Finally. Okay, that clicked into place after a lot of effort. I hope I caught that on camera. It's really difficult with your fingers getting in the way of everything, but there's not much space to play with here. Now we want to do this quick wiring check. Just going through all of these connectors, seeing the ones that are supposed to be empty, disconnected, and those that are supposed to have things connected into them, and just double checking that everything is in the correct places. Power cables are tightened up correctly and in the right orientation. Positive, negative, positive, negative. Can we see it on this one? Yeah, negative, positive. Same for the extension board up here. We have a few connectors that are supposed to be unconnected, but just double check the others have got what you expect to be in them. And then finally, just make sure one last attempt to tidy everything up in here. Get those zip ties cinched up and the excess snipped off them because we are about to put the covers onto this. Okay, so we are doing a final check of all the connectors following the instructions in the manual. So we're checking that the power supply connectors are firmly secured. Obviously, our NFC antenna connector is going in there. Heat bed power cables are nicely secured like so. And the heat bed thermistor into its socket there. Going up, we have the door sensor. That's fitted correctly there. X motor, Y motor. That one is empty. Z motors come into here. The link to the extension board goes in that side there. Can't quite see it behind all of the cables, but I can assure you it is there. So we can see our LCD cable coming in like so there. This is the connector for our extruder cable bundle. That's connected correctly. This one here is supposed to be empty. And then our ground connection is correct there. Now looking at the extension board, there's the chamber thermistor there. There's our side filament sensor that we just had great fun trying to fit. That is fitted correctly there. The next two are cooling fans there and there. Let's go up to these ones. This one is supposed to be empty. Then there are the connectors to our various LED strips there and there. Again, this one's supposed to be empty, and that's the link across to the main board from the extension board. At this point, I believe I can cinch up the remaining zip ties. So we're taking that NFC cover that we just prepared, putting the screws down through these channels so they poke out the bottom like this. Those will locate into these two sections. So one sticking out a little bit and one towards the back there by the looks of things. May also want to make sure that these are moved apart. If this is coming straight down or if this is looking like it's going to get in the way, you can just loosen it and move it to the side a bit and make sure you tighten it up again. Put the cover in place and sink the screws in. Probably going to need the Allen key to do that because the screwdriver is probably not going to fit down unless you've got a correctly sized screwdriver for this. And then finally, it's just showing to mount the NFC connector here next to this RJ45 connector. So not running over the top of that, not running over the top of the power cable, so it doesn't get snagged or interfered with before we put the top cover in place. So just taking this back panel, you drop some screws into there, and another one into this back section here. Let's make sure both of those come all the way out before I try and put this together. And seems this one doesn't want to quite poke out. That's alarming. Something is preventing it from coming all the way out. It fits through okay in that direction. So there must be an issue within that 3D printed section. That means the head of the screw is not getting all the way down to the end. That could be a problem. So I'll just put a slightly longer screw in place there. that'll have to do. So let's put that in place. Get that wayward screw in. And that looks good. So preparing these two metal parts, the back for the X-Buddy case, and then this section that covers over the cables at the top of that back panel. Some screws. Make sure that this is oriented as we show here. The cables are all neatly tucked away. There's certainly no cables that are going to snag over the top of where we are going to sink the screws for that back cover. And so we sink the screws for that back cover. Just be careful, there's a L-shaped protrusion coming out the bottom part of the back cover, so that sort of needs to slide in here first. Jiggle things around, make sure it's not snagging anything inside. And then once it's settled in place, we can put these 6 screws in and we are done with that side. Now for this rear section, this is the back side of it here, and there's this little tray, and I don't think you can quite see in the diagram, but there's another piece that comes up here, so that's going to hook around this cable bundle, and then the screws that hold this in place come in from behind into this section here, so that needs to go over the 2 holes that are down there somewhere. Also at the top of this, there's 4 little tabs. They go into these slots that are, what is that, maybe about like 8 mil or so from the back. So you just need to maybe get down, have a look underneath so you can make sure that all of those slot in nicely, and then push it in place from the bottom once those are all seated. And then once that's done, you probably need to still be holding on to that, but come round to the front of the printer here. Maybe use the screwdriver trick to align one of these holes, put the screw in the other side, remove the screwdriver and put that final screw in, and then all of that is held in place. Okay, now we are putting the X-Buddy cover in place. So make sure the cables are out of the way. This little NFC cable has to go down, make sure it's not getting snagged in front of the Ethernet connector there, which it's not. Just tuck that away a little bit. And make sure nothing is going to snag over the top of these. And then there's a bent piece that needs to slide in here, so you just want to make sure there's no cables are going to be in the way of that, which I don't think they are. And that's the piece there. That just needs to slide in from the bottom end first. And with that in place, I need to find my screwdriver. With that in place, we've got 6 of these little rounded top screws to go in. Okay, that's that cover in place. And finally, we have this top cover here. It's got these 4 tabs that are fitting somewhere up here. Hopefully you can see. There are these 1, 2, 3, 4 little slots. So we're taking this piece. The cables need to just fit into that little channel there, which I'm sure they will do. And we need to somehow get that to clip in there, which it has. And then from the other side, before it snaps out again, the other side, there's 2 screws, 2 remaining screws that we need to put through. So let's turn the printer around so you can see that. Let's try and put a screwdriver in to one of them to help locate it. Whilst I hold that there, still holding the back panel in place with my hand. Let's try and get the screw in. There we go. Put that in, get the other screw. And that's those 2 nicely in place. And it all looks good. Okay, so now we are preparing the 2 side panels, starting off with this panel, which is going to have the reel holder in it. We've got the plastic reel holder spool, and then that needs to go through these various holes down here. So this is the only differentiator between the 2 side parts, I think. So you need to make sure that you select the one that has these holes. And you've got 4 screws, of course, to go in there. Okay, so we take the spool holder. It is actually asymmetrical. There's this lip on one side of it that needs to face upwards. And then these little plastic protrusions will come round and keep it in place in like so. Click it into place and then sink the 4 screws in that manner. Next up, we're taking one of these plastic orange side handle parts, another one of those little plastic collets, and the small section of Bowden tube, along with a couple of screws, pushing that little collet into the side piece like that until it clicks in place. Okay, so we have our side panel. And for this side panel, we want to be fitting this reel holder that's going to clip into or screw into this section here. Sorry for the clashing and clanging that we'll get installing metal. So the screwdriver doesn't actually fit into here, so that's not going to help us too well. So I guess all I can do is send the screws through one at a time. Let's just try screwing it in directly. Yeah, that's not easiest. As always, they haven't given like a little chamfer to get the screws started. So I'm just putting these screws in just to get the hole started. I'm just putting them partially in. We don't want to tap them all the way through, but we want to be able to make sure that once we put this through the metal part, we're not faffing around trying to get the screws seated. They should start off correctly, having done this first of all. Okay, so we'll take those back out again. So now our screwdriver will actually go in there. So I can use that to bring this up, locate at least one of the holes. Can't see what I'm doing. Nah. I don't think that's necessarily going to help us this time. So instead, I'll start us off by putting one of the screws through. Let me just hold that there with my finger, try and locate it over. Oh dear. I need to hold this in place whilst I'm doing it. So just got a bit of duct tape just to hold that to the side of the printer temporarily whilst I attempt to screw this in. So just with that held there. Okay, let's remove that tape. And here we go. So we're also taking this handle piece and another one of those little plastic collets to guide the Bowden tube in. And that just needs to clip in place in here. Or just thread across the table, either way. Second time lucky. Now we're positioning the side panel onto the printer, making sure that these U-shaped parts point upwards. Putting a screw through one side of that side handle there. So this is the M38 screw coming out like so. And then I believe we need to attach that into the filament sensor. So this is going to be a bit of a delicate operation because there's not too much length on this. And we're not going to have much space available here as well. So this shows it quite wide apart. I think once you get to the point where you're doing it up, so this is the next step. So you need to almost close that up completely. Maybe you can access it from the other side and then just clip that over the top of that screw, get that screw in place, not too tightly so this can still swivel around. And then you need to get the orange plastic piece oriented so the screw hole is visible. Then put this back over the top of it, and then that final screw will come up through there and connect into this one, and at which point you can tighten both of those screws up. And then we can put the panel in place, and there are, 9, 10, 11 plastic rivets going through. You may need to use the screwdriver to jiggle things around, but get everything in place there, get all of those rivets in, and then that is the side panel mounted. And finally, we take that small section of Bowden tube, fit it through that collet, and push it in as far as it will go. Some portion will be sticking out here. That's by design. That's where we're going to guide in the filament from our spool. As always, more than the fair share of faff involved in this process. So this handle gets mounted under here, but it's also being used to attach the filament sensor to the other side. So I've put one of the 8RT screws through like so. I then want to push that up. I honestly think this printer design is for people with 5 arms. I need 2 arms to hold this in place, 1 arm to hold this, 1 arm to screw it, and 1 arm to hold this in place the other side. So, I'm going to use duct tape again to loosely hold this thing in place at the bottom. That means I can now take this part, put the screw back in again. I can pull this out just as much as I need to be able to try and locate the screw hole. Now leaning with one hand into the printer, I'll try and bring this up to the filament sensor. You probably won't be able to see this. I'm sorry about that, but it's just all too tight. But what I'm trying to do is just locate that screw into the bolt on this filament sensor, which is quite close to the edge. I think I've got it there. I guess not. I'll use the smaller screwdriver. Okay, that's in place. Of course, with one screw in, that means this is now locked. I can't pull it out and see what I'm doing anymore. So I'll have to hope for the best. To locate things correctly for the second screw, which I will put up into here now. And that's got it, yeah. Yeah, that wasn't very easy. But that is in place. Now we have 9, 10, 11 of the little nylon rivets to put in place. What fun. Okay, just need to seat it properly. I'll get a couple in each side at the top. If I can. Okay, I don't know why that's not seating correctly. In there. Okay. Okay, that's in. With those in place, I can remove the tape. Okay, looks good. And the final step here, we need to get that little PTFE tube in place through its collet there. And a little bit of it will always stick out. That's where we are going to feed our filaments in. So for the other side panel, we have the panel itself, we have the other orange plastic handle, and two slightly smaller screws for this side, and again a load of the plastic rivets. So for this one, the handle aligns with the metal, and those screws just screw directly into this piece of metal. That's all that's needed over here. And as per the other side, we are putting in those 11 plastic rivets just to hold the side panel in place. Again, may want to use the screwdriver to do that. So, okay, I have 2 screw holes there. And we're going to fix the other side handle in place like that. This time we're screwing into the metal itself, so much easier. And put one into the other side. And now we can mount this on the side the same way we did with the other panel. And there we go. And that ends us gummy bears, if you happen to have any left. Let's not go into that incident ever again. Brilliant. In the end, it wasn't that bad this time. I just needed to come up with some techniques to help me with the build. If you enjoyed watching me struggle with connectors and 5-handed assembly steps, please give it a like or leave a comment. The feedback really helps me keep going. If you'd like to see more building, coding, or general technical tinkering, why not hit subscribe? Next time, I'll be finishing off the build, installing the printed panels, the LCD screen, the doors, and maybe, if the build gods are kind, calibrating and running the first print. And, as always, thanks for watching.
Ah, Mr. D! Are you gonna come and relax next to me as I do a screencast? Hmm? Mr. D! Oh, it's a little Baba. Mr. D. Okay. What's the matter, Mr. D? You having fun? You having a nice time? You having a nice time, are you? You're having a lovely time. Oh, that's good. That's good. You can just about get seen from that video. You'll be a bit out of focus, but you'll be on this one. 1, 2, 1, 2. Hey, Mr. T, what's the matter, Bigger Bubs? What's the matter, Bub? Huh? I'm not giving you enough attention. Am I not giving you enough attention? You poor little sausage, aren't you? You poor little sausage. Okay. Bye-bye.